Thank you all for coming tonight. Tonight I'm going to talk about a couple of topics. One of them is marketing moats. So it's building marketing moats and finding ways to compete in a different way, and that is not just by spending more revenue. So the idea is to work in a different way than your, compete in a different way that is not just by spending more money, all right? That's one idea that I'm going to show tonight. The other idea is how do you measure growth? And we're going to talk about that also in the panel. And what I've learned from the past couple of years is that I can measure just dollars, because everyone understands dollars. I've tried to measure a lot of different things. I've tried to measure leads. I've tried to measure MQLs, and each and every time it didn't end well. It was horrible. And actually dollars, everyone understands dollars. So I'm Guillaume Cabane. People call me G. You can call me G. It's great. It's much shorter. It's much more efficient. So quickly about myself, about why I'm talking tonight. So I've been doing marketing for the past 16 years now. And I started at a company which I'm sure you recognize up there in 2003, 2004. I got actually one of my colleagues from back then here in the room tonight. And I went on to work at various different startups in France, and then I moved into the US and worked for Segment and Drift, which are companies in the space which you might recognize. And if you do recognize them, you know that they've been growing very fast, extremely fast, and that is the point of growth. And people are asking me often, how fast? So I joined Segment when it was about 50 people. And I left 18 months later when it was 200 people. We did 3x the revenue. And I joined Drift around 50 people, and I left at 300. We did 5x revenue in about the same time span. And so you might wonder, well, that's okay, but like, is that really good? How does it compare to other companies? And so I actually pulled the KeyBank Capital from 2018 growth rate versus revenue. And if you look at the where the companies are at the bottom here, you've got revenue here. All right, and here you've got the growth rate at 200%. And so if you look, we have Segment up there, and we have Drift somewhere up there at 500%. All right, so it gives you an idea of how fast that has been going. And now, actually, I have left Drift, and I run a growth advisory company, but we don't really care about that tonight. Tonight, we're going to talk about building moats, right? And so I have a nice picture of moats. So a moat is this dense area of water where people get trapped in when they try to invade your castle. And so it's very applicable to marketing. But I want to talk first of failures. I want to talk of my failures because very often people want to learn about the tricks and tactics that I have used. But those are really hard to replicate as is in your company because you have a different industry, different company size, whatnot. But failures are actually very easy to generalize. You can learn a lot more from failures than you can learn about successes when you're trying to replicate some of those strategies. So let's talk of my typical failure is actually not understanding what my boss wants. All right, so I work for founders. I'm sure a lot of you work for founders, startup founders, which are interesting beasts. What your boss wants is the most important question. All right. And usually the boss wants good KPIs that move them in the right direction. All right. The boss wants a prioritized roadmap, which means what are you doing next month? All right. And how much revenue is that going to bring me? All right. And interestingly, as a marketer, I've been able to fail at every single of those, sometimes in parallel. And yeah, it makes sense. It's like I do growth and I say, we do experiments, right? And so what are you doing next month? More experiments. How much revenue? I don't know if it's going to work, right? And so that is a dramatic problem because how can I build trust? How can I build confidence in my team if I can't give a KPI that is linked to the business impact, and if I can't give, let's say, an estimate of how much that's going to be the next the next month. And so let's look into KPIs first. And the first thing I want to put out is that MQLs are gone, right? And if they're not gone for you, be ready because they will be gone soon, right? And I wish they'd be gone because they are not a reliable driver of business impact. If you look at this nice chart, which I pulled conveniently from Google imagery, let's look at traffic first, right? Which everyone knows traffic is great traffic, right? Is traffic a good measurement of your team's efforts? No. I can build a blog post which is popular but does not drive any signups or any revenue because it's merely tangential to my business. Is traffic a good indicator of future revenue? No, as I just said, right? So any of those, right, are metrics that I can cheat on as a marketer to actually show what seems like impact but is none. It's very important to understand for the founders in the room that marketers are really good at being able to optimize one thing as long as it's not revenue, right? I speak by knowledge. And so that's the problem. And so because it's easy for us, we tend to do that. If I'm measured on revenue, if I'm paid on revenue, oh yeah, I'm going to drive revenue. All right, you're not going to like that. You're not going to like that traffic. So if I'm paid on traffic, I'm going to optimize. You're not going to like the traffic, but you're going to have traffic. And the other thing is the ability to prioritize and forecast. And usually, if you run growth teams, you've seen something like this. All right, this is Growth Hackers, which is a company that was supposed to help growth teams do growth experiments, which failed. But the idea is the same. It looks like a spreadsheet, and you have a huge bucket of ideas, like an ice bucket of ideas, with some kind of an ice score, which is here, right? Which is impact, confidence, and ease, right? And we then, when we have the question of like, what are you going to do next month? We say, well, I'm going to do the things that are at the top. And the boss says, great. What's a 6, Guillaume? I say, oh, 6 is good. And this is like, how good? I said, well, it's better than a 5. And the thing is that it doesn't mean anything. Because how do I pick 5? How do I pick? It doesn't mean anything. And I can't sum all of the ideas there on that list and say, hey, next month is going to be really good. I can't. Right? And if you look at other teams, and I've asked a few of my friends to send me their screenshots of what they do, it's kind of the same issue, right? You have the exact same problem. You've got stuff like that, right? This is, in a way, worse because we're measuring a lot of different drivers to get to that score, but we're missing revenue. We're just not measuring future revenue impact, right? That blows my mind. And so I tried 3 times implementing ICE scores, and I failed 3 times, mostly because I was not able to communicate to the founders and the rest of the company how much impact are we going to have, right? And so basically what happens when you sum that is that there's a lack of trust, and it's pretty much deserved, all right? That is a situation I've been at in many different companies. And so I'm going to show you a new process. Yes, so the Star Wars fans will see the joke. And so I built a new process, and this process is actually built by my friend Darius, a contractor, when he was at Dropbox. He's now at Facebook. And it's supposed to answer those questions. What are you working on? Are you working on the right things? What's the impact going to be in dollars? And if I give you another resource, what's going to change? All right? And for me, it helps me by answering the question, if the boss comes with a new idea that is supposedly great, how can I reject it? And you're going to see it works pretty well at that, right? And the important thing is that growth teams, and I'm not going to cover that tonight, but growth teams mostly work across the entire funnel. They do life cycle marketing, the entire funnel. And I'm aligning all experiments on one thing, which is forecasted revenue. And so if you think of what is forecasted revenue, you can take each of those metrics, like the new visitors, returning visitors, and checkout start, or if you're in B2B, signups, and whatever. I look at the total revenue driven in the past 6 months through that indicator. I divide by the number of people. I then look at the unit value of each of those KPIs. And so I say, well, in my case, a new visitor is $10, a checkout start is $500. And then we apply some machine learning to be able to like split within those. Those are the good, those are the bad. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. And if you look at what's a good growth dashboard, a good growth dashboard should have those different, I'd say, fields we're looking at, which ends with the very important, and we're going to talk about that, which is very interesting, expected revenue per day of work. All right, and that's one of the things that I want you to leave with. I manage my growth teams like a sales team. My engineers have a revenue quota, and they have bonuses based on revenue attainment, right, by day of work. And it works well. And it changes the mindset. Let's see first, sorry, I missed something. Let's see first the idea behind it. Who knows here about sales velocity? Okay, enough people. Cool. So sales velocity is basically an indication of like revenue addition by unit of time. All right. If your sales velocity goes up, it means your salespeople are more efficient at adding a revenue. It exists to help your sales team prioritize the deals that are going to close faster per unit of time and revenue than the deals that are huge but are going to take months. And so we just replicated the same idea in growth velocity, which is basically the ability for your team to add revenue over time at a faster pace. So if you look at this thing, you're going to say, gee, this is terrible. This is yet another spreadsheet. But let's look at the details a teeny bit. So we have all of the ideas there. And then we have who submitted the idea. We have the owner. Great, typical stuff. All right. But then we start having things that calculate future revenue. And you can see here we have a weighted revenue. So a forecast of revenue of each idea, the number of days to build it, which unit, which KPI are we impacting, signups, how many of those? And then we have the impact metrics that we pulled earlier. Each of those are updated daily by Periscope, right? So we have the value of each metric updated daily on the 6 months average. We then say that we're going to impact or move like 30 signups here, which is a 9.9% increase over total. That's a 30K weighted revenue if you multiply the revenue by the confidence. And then we have here the dollars per day of work. Why? Because we divide the 30K by the number of days to build, which is 5. All right? And so I know that this idea is supposed to bring $8,000 or ish by day of work if those forecasts are correct. And we have then the entire pipeline of ideas. What are we building? What are we awaiting results on? Pipeline is the important word. Just like a sales team, we have a pipeline of ideas, which means we can sum the pipeline to know how much we have in stock. Do we have enough ideas for next month? Do we have enough resources to bring the revenue? All right? That is very important because we know our average success rate. And so I can tell my boss, if you give me another engineer, unlock 20 days worth of work, I know how much revenue I can pull down, right? Just like a sales team. And so I can answer those questions. What are we doing next? We're doing this next. What impact will it have? Well, our weighted revenue is $270,000 in 5.5 days of work. This is obviously filtered down because I don't want to see everything, but you can imagine that if I had like 17 days of work planned, I know I'm underusing my resources, right? And then we start having those metrics at the engineer level. Each engineer actually has a goal of $1,000 per day of work because that's more or less what they cost in the Bay Area, right? And the interesting thing is that they start competing for the best projects because they want the bonuses, right? They're all humans, or at least they claim to be. And the thing is, how do they compete? They compete by bringing the estimate of days of work down, right? Because one engineer is going to say, oh, this is a 5-day idea. And the other one say, I bet I can do it in 3. And I say, okay, commit to 3, because I pay them, of course, not on forecast, but on actuals, right? And so that creates the right incentive. Engineers building ideas faster. That is, speed is very important because you might think, oh, gee, like there is a huge variability in your confidence estimate. Actually, not that much, because moving from 30% to 50% is a small variation. Moving from 3 days to 6 days is a 2x decrease in value. Right? So that is the most important thing. I want to incentivize my team to go faster because that is how we find competitive moats. Okay, so my process is aligned on sales organizations, which CEOs understand very well. All right, they understand how that works. We all know how sales orgs work. All right, it's very predictable and it's easy to communicate and to build a commit. Now that we've said that, let's go back to building moats. And the interesting thing that I've seen in the past couple of years is that CEOs and founders, they understand the concept of a moat for their product. They understand moats as intellectual property. They understand moat as I have engineers in Belarus, which are cheaper, or I have a distribution moat. They often forget marketing moats, right? That's amazing. And if you look at where I started at Apple, Apple, if anything, is a company that has a marketing moat more than anything else. All right. If you want to prove that they forget that, I want to ask the room who is a SaaS buyer? Who buys SaaS? Okay, let's say like a good half of the room. Of those people, I want to ask who enjoys the buying process. Okay, we have half a person who's like waving like halfway. Okay, okay. It's a horrible experience, and I buy SaaS more than most people, right? I buy for like more than 500,000 of SaaS per year, right? And it's just not me, just not you, folks. It's like Forrester in 2015 said it's like 53% of B2B buyers prefer researching data on their own versus talking to a sales rep. And you might think, well, this is 2015. We're better marketers now, right? And it's sure, the data from 2017 is like 68%. It's not going down the right way. Huh? And 70% of B2B buyers start with a generic search query. Of course, not a brand, all right? Which is interesting. It's very interesting. And if you just summarize that, what it means is that like your website, your salespeople is the last place people go for a buying decision. And actually, I pulled some private data from G2 Crowd. I asked them for some private data. And they had this survey which they were running. And so what is the most influential in your purchase decision process? There's one thing that I want to highlight. MarTech is here, all right, at 3%. It's like not a lot. It's like basically interns. And so, and 45% say that they engage the discussion once they've already made a decision. They only talk because they have to, not because they want to. Okay, and the N is pretty good. The N is like 1,300 buyers here, all right? That's a pretty good data set. All right, and so we need to innovate, right? Because I want to say again, like the only ones who are going to win are the ones who do things differently. If you do marketing the same way your competitor does, you're going to die in horrible pain. And who wins when you don't innovate? Interestingly, some people do, and that is the channels. Right? Google, Facebook, actually, if you look at the Mary Meeker's 2019 report, year after year, the spend is going up. All right? And you could say, well, that is because the number of companies is going up. And I say, the CAC is going up. The CAC for B2B and B2C has been going up steadily, well, almost for the past 5 years. All right? And we are now at close to 70% more than when it was 5 years ago. All right? And the LTV is pretty stable, which means that the margin is going down. Right? And that is not sustainable. Right? We can't continue to just pay more and more if our LTV is fairly stable. And that is the challenge that we need to solve. Advance this a bit. There you go. And one of the ways, and it's interesting that we are hosted by Pantheon tonight, one of the ways that people are solving that is that the best CMOs, so that's the 2019 Gartner study, the best CMOs are actually reducing their budgets across the line except for MarTech. Okay? All of the categories going down, like humans and paid and going down. MarTech is going up significantly. Okay? That's 2018 versus 2017 data. Okay, which makes a lot of sense. They want to compete in different ways, right? And when I think of competing, this is a life cycle of growth, tactics and ideas, all right? They are short-lived, and the decay is faster and faster as we share things, right? Which means that what I'm talking about tonight, you should apply tomorrow, because next week it might be dead, right? We'll see. Example, my friend Andrew Chen actually pulled this thing at the bottom here, which I want to highlight, right? Look at this here. This is the very first banner ad. Okay, this is like 1994, I believe, yeah, 1994 Hotwire ad. It has a 78% click-through rate. Yeah, has anyone here seen anything with a 78% click-through rate? I've never seen, and I'm doing marketing for 15, I've never seen that, right? And that was banner ads, all right? And 10 years ago, I was doing like personalized like sales emails, text-based, and that now is almost dead. And video ads are like decreasing. And now everyone and myself, we're all on LinkedIn posting updates on LinkedIn to drive content. I bet that 2 years from now, this is dead, all right? And so that is what we need to talk about, which is innovation, right? And so some people ask me, where should I innovate? And the answer is everywhere, across the entire funnel. Do not let any stone unturned, right? So the first thing I'm going to show you is something which you should already be doing if you do B2B. It's something I built a couple years ago, which is called the reveal loop. And the reveal loop is a very simple idea. It starts with the idea that I have traffic, of which some of it might already be qualified, right? And most of those people don't sign up, right? Only like 3-4% sign up. But I can figure out, by using some enrichment APIs and looking at the IP address and pulling the domains from those visitors, which companies are coming to my site. And because I already have customers, I can build some regression models to figure out, are those visitors that are coming to my site but not signing up, are they good visitors? Are they qualified? Should I reach back to them? And those who are qualified and don't sign up, I do send them an email, which is like a hot/cold outbound email, because they have come to my site. They have not signed up. I know they're qualified. I know they have intent. Of course, I should sign up. Of course, I should send them an email. And I see hundreds of high-fit companies per day, and we send hundreds of emails per day. This is a very, very successful campaign. But for some companies, unfortunately, it doesn't work because this Clearbit Reveal API does not have good coverage. I'm helping a company right now that's in the e-commerce space, and they don't have this. Basically, the match rate is below 10%. And so we thought, well, how do we solve that problem? How do we innovate? And the thing in B2B is that most companies I talk to, there's a finite TAM, a total addressable market. All right, there's a finite number of good companies that could buy a product. All right, and if that's your case, you should know all of them. You should have a list with all of those potential customers in your CRM or CDP or whatever. You should have that. You should score them and you should know the value. Because when you do that, everything becomes possible. Let me show you. We built a little system for this company that sells to e-commerce stores that will try and get the domain by Clearbit. But if it can't, it will then look at the coordinates of the IP address, compare that with the HQ address of all known e-commerce stores in the US, and look to see if we have a close match. What we did is we compared all of our current customers with their billing address. We looked at the radius distance between their IP address and their billing address. We found the radius was less than 3 kilometers. We applied that to people coming to our website. If we have a match within the prospect database, which is less than 3 kilometers away than the IP address, we assign it to that company. In essence, what we're doing is this. All right, we're placing a big map on this beautiful country with all these little points. We're finding a visit that comes from somewhere, I think in Idaho. And we are looking at how many companies we have around. If there's more than one match, what we will do is that we will assign to the closest one. Super cheap. The subscription to this geolocation database is like $39 a month. And I am now able to identify about 25% of my entire traffic for $39 a month, and I have a moat. I have a moat because we applied engineering to solve hard problems, right? So, I forgot to move forward on this fantastic animation of Utah, not Idaho, right? Yeah, Yeah, this is basically what we do. It's fairly simple. That's because we have the entire TAM of e-commerce stores in a database that we can query. And so that's a way to innovate. And you should be doing the same thing. But if we go further, what I told you about is the ability to predict the value of everyone in that list, of building a machine learning model or some kind of regression that tells you how much is worth each company in that list. And the basic principle around that is that if you think of a marketing campaign and you think of a lead, that lead might be profitable, which means that the future value of that company is actually higher than the cost of selling. And I'm talking about like fully loaded cost here, which means also salespeople calling that person. And you might also have some leads which are unprofitable because either they're not going to close or they're going to close on a very small plan. And the problem is that you don't really know which is which, right? Before you engage with them, you don't really know which is which. And so you build those models, and I've built one with my friends at Mad Kudu, where we're able to predict about 79% of future revenue within 16% of our leads. So to concentrate revenue within a smaller population. But what that means, if you go back to that chart, is that you have all of those leads on your, let's say, in your site, on your funnel, on your CRM, and what you're doing is that you're basically placing them on that sales velocity curve, so you're predicting how much they're going to be worth. What that means as a marketer is I can start breaking down my actions into buckets based on future forecasted revenue. I'm sure most of you who do B2B have like some kind of an ABM, let's say, action strategic, and we have also some marketing automation for the people who are cheaper, right? But if you can have that curve, why just cut it in two? You could cut it in as many buckets as you want, right? You can actually do something like that and have very fine-tuned consequences based on the forecast of revenue. And if your competitors have a fixed spend per lead, what does that mean? It means you're going to force them to either overspend on the entire, I'd say, market, right, or retreat from the market. That is what you're doing, right? If you're able to acquire customers, each individual customer at exactly the right price where you know you maximize margin, and your competitors can't, you're going to kill them, which is what we want, right? And that works because we're bidding just the right amount, right? We're spending just the right amount of dollars, and we're trying also to limit the amount of spam because we don't need to spam people who we know have a low chance of converting or have a low value, right? This idea is simple. I just copied what is done in B2C. If you think of B2C of Criteo, I saw some people of Criteo in the room, right? It's the same thing. Criteo and all of those like retargeting companies are acquiring data to place a bid to display an ad in the chance that somebody converts. I'm doing the same thing, but for B2B companies, right? And in a finite TAM, you can compute those scores on the entire market. And so you're thinking of Criteo, you're saying, well, gee, that works great, but they have a lot of data. How do we get the data? How do we get enough data to place the bids, right? And if you look at your funnel, you wonder, what does it start? You look back at this beautiful funnel chart, and you think it starts at the top. I'm going to say wrong. It actually starts before, right? The data acquisition and the customer experience starts before. And Google helped us by publishing a study in 2015, which says that B2B buyers do 12 searches before engaging with a brand. You might think that is high. Actually, that is low. If you book a hotel for this weekend or a restaurant, how many searches are you going to do? All right, I look at the data actually for salt, NSF. There was an insane amount of queries per consumer for salt, right? Where I can't care which kind of salt I put on my dish. But as consumers, that is our current behavior. As consumers, we are looking more and more into becoming experts at the topic of whatever we're going to buy. The same consumers have the same behaviors in B2B, right? And that is extremely clear. And they're doing those searches, as we said, on other sites than yours. I pulled data also from G2 Crowd. the average time you can see here, like the mean time is between like 3 months and 4 months, right? And so there's yeah, I gotta know. And so people are doing a lot of searches throughout a very long time, which means you got to be able to capture the intent, the information throughout all of those months. And so the way that we can model that is by looking at the fit and behavior modeling. And so the way that we can look at that is by doing this model. So there's a basic, I'd say, a fit. And if you think that your likelihood to convert for your company is between 0 and 1, where 1 is they convert and 0 is they never convert and they bounce, right? And you sell software, which I used to do. If you think of like, say, live chat, my past company, they might think that Drift is good for them and they should have live chat, right? And if you move one more, right, they're going to do some research, right? But the basic understanding is just like they're happy about chat and they have some kind of feeling that 20% there to conversion, all right? So they're going to do some research and move again. I think you were too sharp. There you go. And so they're going to visit websites and move again. Then they're going to discover the market, right? They're going to do all that research. Let's move again. There's a lot of things there. So they visit your website, right? Let's move again. They discover the product. They register for trial. They do a discovery. And last one, there you go. That is the behavior, right? Those steps are the 12 steps that we talked about before. The problem is that as marketers, most of the time, you only know about what's in the orange bucket here. Once people start the trial, you don't know of anything before that point. Let's move up one. If we expand those 12 steps, the discovery of market, and then we move up one, what do we find out? We find out that what I was doing before was actually enriching and scoring people coming to my website at the time they come to my website, which is too late. There's actually a lot of places where I can buy data, intent data, right, before they come to me. A research where they're looking at reviews, where they're expressing buying intent, right? And if we move up one, what I've done, and what I'm going to show you tonight, is how you can actually start scoring and enriching and contacting those people at the very first intent detection, right? And there's no order here, right? They could visit the G2 Crowd page, or they could say hire a sales director first. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that I know their future value, and I'm now listening for behaviors. So let's look at a couple examples. One example here is Datanyze. Datanyze tells me what is installed on a website, right? Which technologies are running on a website. I can do an amazing campaign, which I have done with Intercom. How do I compete with Intercom? I love having competitors because they are building education for me, right? And then I can just riff off that. I was actually pulling all the people who had installed Intercom's JavaScript 10 months ago because I know there's a renewal coming up. And I can come in with a low ball offer, all right? Exactly at the 10-month mark. Because that has two consequences, all right? Either they take my offer, and so I'm creating 100% churn for them. Sure, I have some, I'd say, LTV impact, but it's marginal, it's like 30%, right? Or they don't take my offer. What they're going to do? They're going to take my offer and bring it to Intercom. Say, hey, Drift is like offering a cheaper price. So I'm creating MRR churn in both cases for the cost of an email, all right? G2 Crowd actually sells you data, right, on who's seeing your page, your competitors, or your category each time your logo is displayed. You actually know the companies who are doing that, right? It's amazing data. If you look here at Informatica, this is a screenshot, actual screenshot from the UI, right? So this company, Informatica, you can see all of the competitors they looked at, and the different colors of the bubbles highlight different unique visitors. If you're a sales rep, and I know sales rep in the room here, this is obviously a buying process. I don't need to sell you that lead. You know you got to call that lead right now, right? And Product Hunt, I imagine most people here, because we're in SF, know Product Hunt. There's a free API. I've monitored who upvotes my product. I've also monitored who upvotes my competitors' products, all right? And I have sent that to my CS team saying, hey, we have a customer who is upvoting our competitor. You should call those people. Something is up, all right? LinkedIn, we talked about LinkedIn. LinkedIn is amazing. It's a great platform. It's a fantastic platform for content distribution. The problem is you don't own what's happening there. And that's a pain. So what we've started doing is actually having our VP of marketing post very successful videos, and then we scrape all the engagement. We scrape all the people who like the post and all the people who comment. And then we follow up on LinkedIn with a DM or by email saying, hey, thank you very much for engaging with our VP of Marketing's post. We'd love to continue the conversation because it's contextualized, because it's really hard for them to say no because they actually did something on that post. And you might wonder, gee, well, what does LinkedIn think about that? I asked them, they like it, right? Why do they like it? Because I'm creating value on their platform, because I'm actually sending messages on their platform in the name of a rep, and so I'm creating a conversation, right? And I'm not stealing the data to build a competitor, right? There's just no APIs existing. So I asked the VP of growth at LinkedIn, and he says, yeah, sure, as long as you're not pulling like profile data, we don't care. So I said, great, right? 100% worth it. And if you look at predict leads, it's a way for me to actually know who's being hired and who's opening a job post. I guarantee you sell software, I guarantee that at least 30% of your new customers are because there's some kind of an exec change or some kind of a role change at the company. That's what change drives software adoption. Right? If you think of stuff like Pantheon or Segment or Drift, it's a hard change. The only time when that's going to happen is that when you can't really say no because someone was hired, you don't say no to someone you just hired. It's a rule of life. And Save Data. Save Data enables me to track job changes within my champions, people who were my customers. In SF, in the US, the average tenure is 2 years and 3 months, right? Which means I've got about 20 to 25% of my champions who change companies every year, right? What are those people going to do? Farm potatoes? No, right? They're going to stay in tech and they're going to do the same job. What do? We track where we go. We send them a very nice gift, a headset, branded headset. The first week they get a new job, say, thank you, we love you, we love to stay in touch, right? We are the first gift that they get after the company that hired them, if not before, right? Yeah, some companies don't give gifts, so that's easy. And the last thing is, how do we use that data, right? How do we use those learnings? Right? And I'm going to show you how we create moats also in our outreach, right? How do we reach out in a very smart and innovative way? And if you look at the basic structure of a sales email, it usually injects some level of personalization into a template, right? The better companies actually inject a lot of data there. And we inject that data, for sure. In the past roles I've done, we also inject the behavior we have captured. If they are hiring someone, we talk about it. If they are in a buying process on GTCrowd, we talk about it. LinkedIn, of course, we inject it. And you might think, oh, that's pretty good, right? But we're kind of missing what is like the new wave right now, which is like a good illustration. So we thought about it. We look, well, what is a good illustration in a sales email? It's usually personalized. If you think of Looker, right? It's usually like your product or their website or both together. And so we build scripts to actually generate those previews at scale. So we slowed that down, but it's a script, so you're not going to be impressed, especially because Pantheon goes super fast. But the idea is that we can generate a preview of what our product looks on their website to make it super relevant. My goal is that my emails always lead with value, right? They always are helpful. I'm showing you exactly what it will look like. You can see the script is now going to the website, injecting the right logo, the right colors, the right messaging automatically because we detect all of that. And then we merge it into the email. The text is personalized, the image is personalized, and it's done at scale in a couple of seconds, right? Which means we're able to send those emails in thousands. The interesting thing is that, do humans believe it? And yes, they do, right? If you look here, you have like a sales guy on Slack who's saying, is this email coming from growth, right? So we have our own sales guy who doesn't know if this is a human or non-human email, right? And if you think about the LinkedIn thing, right, we have like people who are saying, yeah, we got great meetings, but the best is from the customers, right? The customers say, how do you end up setting up this email? It's really well targeted and well written, right? And interestingly, no one wrote it. And so if you think and simplify that, we're capturing data, we're storing data, we're sending an email. Why stop at emails, right? Let's actually start doing a lot more than just email as an action, right? We can do physical goods, we talked of headsets, we can do web content, we can do advertising, right? A couple of those examples. Chat here with Drift, that chat box is personalized and only pops up for the visitors for whom we have a high prediction of revenue. We don't want to engage in chat with people who we have a forecast of low revenue because we're losing time, we're losing margin, all right? And one way that we did that, which you can understand, is we had this bot, which says something like, "Hi there, how do you like your coffee?" We had that on a B2B website, Segment's website. And so people say, "What do you mean how I like my coffee? What's wrong with your bot?" All right? And so, yeah, sure. Do you want tea or do you want coffee, right? And so people play with it. Yeah, I want coffee. So do you want sugar? And it's building an order. Because we know the IP address, we know the HQ address, we know where to deliver coffee, right? And so then we send to Sendozo, we send to Postmates. We just need to ask for the first name, which is convenient because we need it. And then we deliver coffee in about 20 minutes in most cities in the US. The interesting thing is that people ask, what's the cost of that? The cost is $15, which, because I have a forecast, I know when to do it. That is an example of when I can use my forecast, my prediction of value, to do something which is memorable and different, because no one does that. And I can guarantee those people that came to us at Gala Coffee, they rave about it. They tell their colleagues get a coffee, which is great, because then what's happening? I've got 15 minutes for my sales reps to place a demo, because they're waiting for coffee. They're on my site, right? I've got the best excuse in the world. And also, there's an HBR study on the impact of hard drinks on purchase decisions, which you should look into. It's positive, and as a counterpoint, when you make a large purchase, never take a hard drink. Always take a cold drink. There's actually a pretty strong correlation. And so we talked of chats, but the rest of the website, you should personalize the rest of the website. And so if you look at Segment's website, when I was there, we actually made the forecast fast enough that we were able to change the entire website. And we removed the pricing page for high forecast, high revenue, entirely. Why? Because if Nike comes to my site, I don't want them to see that I have a $99 plan, right? That is detrimental to my salespeople. I only want them to see, talk to us, and get a demo, right? And it's not just me doing that thing, right? We are personalizing, there's a couple of companies personalizing each visitor's experience, right? If you look at Looker here, it's interesting, right? Looker actually makes all those changes on the homepage in parallel, right? And so each visitor can see a unique version of Looker's homepage that is predicted to convert higher than any other variation, right? And it's not A/B testing, that's the thing, right? Compared to a typical A/B testing, we are using ML or AI here with a forecast revenue to forecast which variation will lead the highest impact, right? If you look at their results, which I was able to pull, they got a 44% increase in SQLs, and they tested like 433 variations. But because we create 10 million possible combinations, that is worth decades worth of traditional A/B testing, right? If we take the aggregate of people doing all of that, it's a lot more. And some people tell me, well, great, but that only works for Looker and people have lots of traffic. Look at Perkville, super small traffic, less than 2,000 pages views per day. They're able to test 39 variations, 600 different versions, 600,000 different versions, right? And their results are 42% lift. In aggregate, for all companies using this new strategy, it's 177 variations, 25 years worth of testing, 6 times more performance than traditional A/B testing. That is a moat. That is definitely, most definitely a moat. So to recap, what are we doing here? All right? And I want to finish on that. We are just predicting the lead value based on intent, right? We are capturing intent data, creating a score as we capture more data, as time goes on, and we're assigning a value, we see here the scores, but then obviously dollars, right? And because we have that forecast, we can then have actions which are based on that intent, right? And we have actions which are based on that forecast of revenue. And if I can get back to this, the overall schematic looks like this, right? We capture data, we store it, we centralize it, and then we output the consequences, okay? The signals are going to be different for you in your company, and the consequences are going to be different for you in your company. But the overall idea should be you should align everything on a forecast of revenue throughout the entire channel. And that's it. Thank you very much.